Praise to God, who reveals himself to us through his word. Good morning. Good morning. Just as today is a different kind of service from our usual Eucharist, the readings today presented a little dilemma for me as I prepared this. Readings are usually chosen to be complementary to each other, to build upon each other. Today's kind of a yin-yang day. Here's the yin-yang symbol. It's composed of two sections. It's a circle, a white half with a black dot, and a black half with a white dot. Some have described these two parts as male and female, light and darkness. Our yin might be described as dark, passive, downward and cold, contracting and weak, whereas yin is bright and active, expanding, upward, hot, strong. Some even describe yin and yang as water and fire. So it certainly seems like they would be opposites, and yet they're really not. It's more like that old song, Love and Marriage goes together like horse and carriage. You young people wouldn't know that one. A carriage goes nowhere by itself. And a horse cannot begin to carry the number of people, nor in comfort, that a carriage can. They have to go together. And so you cannot have darkness without light, nor heat without the opposite cold. Psychologists say that the opposite of love is not anger or hate. It's apathy. Strong feelings of love, hate, anger have the opposite of no feelings, apathy. But if there were no positive feelings, there wouldn't be any negative feelings. Yin-yang. It's easy for people to get strongly involved in divisive issues because they care about something. You don't become angry or upset unless you care about something. And so we have pro-life and pro-choice, pro-coal economy, and pro-city family. And so we come to the readings today. In Jeremiah, God tells him, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." That's pretty early. And in the psalm, the writer, it's probably David, is seeking assurance that God will always be with him, and he says, "From birth I have relied on you." I don't remember relying on God at birth. But what it really tells us is that God truly cares about Jeremiah and David, and by example, cares equally for us. And yet, through Jeremiah, God says, "Go be my prophet and tell people I'm going to make pronouncements against them. I'm going to take the people from the northern territories and I'm going to send them down to Jerusalem and Judah, and I'm going to camp them out on their doorstep and they're going to pay." Now that's pretty angry. That's pretty harsh. Why? Because he cares about his people. And what were his people doing? Worshipping pagan gods, burning offerings to pagan gods. Made him mad because he loved his people and he wanted his people to love him. The Old Testament, of course, is full of that. Now, Paul, on the other hand, another reading, gives us this love epistle. Love is patient, love is kind. It is not easily angered. It does not keep a record of wrongs. Really? Doesn't it seem like God kind of kept a record of wrongs? The Old Testament is full of his wrath. And then we have the gospel. Now, in Luke's gospel today, Jesus has returned home to Nazareth. And he's preaching in the synagogue, just like he preaches everywhere that he goes in the synagogue. And the people tell us at first he was very impressed. But what we don't hear today is what happened just before today's gospel, where it starts. What was happening is he was preaching, and he was reading from the scriptures that said, I am the anointed one. And then he says, the scriptures have been fulfilled. Wow. You know what that says? This is who I am. And so the people at first were really impressed. He's quite a teacher, until somebody questioned his parentage. Hey, this is Joseph's son. You know that carpenter? Why do we think we should believe him? And Jesus responds, he sits down and says, no prophet's honored in his hometown. You don't even know who I am. And then talks about these two prophets, Elijah and Elisha, who are honored in the Jewish tradition, especially Elijah, and they did not perform miracles in their hometown. They were not recognized there. They went elsewhere. In another gospel, in Matthew says, and he, Jesus, did not do many miracles there in Nazareth because of their lack of faith. And so he's really telling those people in Nazareth, you don't know who I am. You don't have any faith. Why aren't you asking me for healings? Why aren't you asking me for miracles like I did in Capernaum? Capernaum's only 20 miles away. You know they had to hear about them. Everybody's going back and forth on these trade routes. Why aren't you asking me for help? And Capernaum, there's some really good stuff there that we've heard about. You know, the guy that was lowered through the roof, the paralyzed man to be healed, and Simon Peter's mother-in-law. Remember, she had a fever, and he went and healed her in Capernaum. And then there was that Roman centurion who wanted his servant healed. They were in Capernaum. And the lepers were in Capernaum. Lots of healing going on in Capernaum. And what happens in Nazareth? I'm going to go to a carpenter's son and ask for healing. And so he puts them down and says, you don't have any faith. You don't honor me. Then they got mad. Mad enough to drag him to the edge of a cliff and throw him over. That's a real switch, isn't it? From first being impressed until someone said, where did he come from? And now they're going to throw him off a cliff. And what did he do? He walked away. Yin and yang. Love and anger. Of course, if you've ever raised a teenager, you know all about that already. Good parents get angry because they care about their child. They set limits and expectations for good behavior because they want that teen to be prepared to become an adult. They want that child to be prepared to be successful in society. And so they set these expectations because they know they're going to run into them again out in society. Society expects things of us. I'm kind of amused these days by an ad on TV. This is a divergence, but it's just struck me. You know all those ads about if you're not whitening your teeth, you're yellowing? And isn't there teeth whitening stuff everywhere? Now, where did that come from? It's a normal process for your teeth to yellow as you age. I have a friend who's a dental hygienist. I hear it. Don't worry, Jane, it's normal. Well, then where did this whitening thing come? Society has suddenly moved to an expectation that it doesn't matter if it's normal. It ain't normal anymore. You gotta have white teeth. And so expectations do change. Whether that's a good thing or not. I don't like the taste of that stuff. We think that sometimes people know what expectations are. And then I'm surprised sometimes when I see they don't. I think it was last week in the Daily News, I read about a speaker going to one of the high schools. And the speaker was telling the students how to present themselves when they apply for a job, even if it's at McDonald's. Tuck your shirt in. Make eye contact. Say, yes, sir. Not, yeah. Okay. Some of us know that ahead of time. But obviously, not everybody does. And those expectations are based on things that are right and wrong, and that's not obvious to everyone, or it's clouded by media stories or political correctness. What are we to make of situations? For one thing, there are several ways to respond. Sometimes unfailing love is it. Accepting love, unconditional love, even tough love. But one response does not fit all situations, as we see in Jeremiah or Jesus in Nazareth. Sometimes anger is an appropriate response. God got angry with the Israelites because he wanted them to do the right thing. A third possibility is simply walk away. That is why we need clear directives of right and wrong, something based on a good moral compass that points to true north. There's a TV program on right now called What Would You Do? It's kind of like the old candid camera thing. Again, you young folks don't know about that, unless you see it on the old reruns. But this program has more serious situations, and one that I happened to watch was an actor playing a drum with his supposed 11-year-old son. And he's stumbling down the street, saying very loudly, "Okay, son, now I know I shouldn't drive. I'm going to expect you to drive. Drive me home." Son's 11. And he's approaching the car and opening the door. And some people go and walk by. Young fella did that. Woman with her mother. Her mother was able to walk. Walked on. One lady stopped and said, "Let me get you a cab. Give me the keys. I'll get you a cab. That'll get you home safe. I'll pay for it." Another man really got upset and he said, "Give me the keys." No, my son's going to, no. And he's pushing the son into the driver's seat. No. And he said, "I'm calling 911. And he went and stood behind the car. Luckily, 911 had been alerted by the program crew. And the third man had been an EMT. And he wasn't going to let that man get in the car, or his son, because he knew from experience what some possible consequences might be. It didn't matter whether the father was driving drunk or the son is 11 and driving. Consequences could easily be the same. And then afterwards, they interviewed each of these people. And some people said, that wasn't my problem. And the lady with her mother said, "I'll have to take care of my mother." And of course, the people who helped said, "I couldn't let that happen." Many of us are faced with situations and issues that cry for a response. Do you know what yours would be? What would you do?